What if I told you the woman who seems the most distant, the most difficult to read, and the least interested in you is actually thinking about you more than anyone else? Most men walk away from a woman at the exact moment she's becoming emotionally attached. And by the end of this video, you'll understand the 7 hidden signs that reveal when her cold behavior is hiding a powerful obsession. Miss these signs, and you could lose someone who genuinely wants you. I'm writing variant standard ID 61482. 201. Cold behavior doesn't always mean lack of interest. One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships and attraction is assuming that someone's cold behavior automatically means they are not interested. It seems logical on the surface. If someone likes you, they should be warm, expressive, enthusiastic, and eager to show their feelings. If they act distant, reserved, or difficult to read, most people immediately interpret that as rejection. But human psychology is far more complicated than that. The truth is that emotions do not always produce obvious behavior. In fact, the stronger someone's feelings become, the more likely they are to become cautious about revealing them. This is especially true when there is a fear of vulnerability, rejection, disappointment, or loss of control. What appears as emotional distance may actually be emotional investment hidden beneath layers of self-protection. When a woman has no interest in a man, her behavior is usually simple and effortless. She does not spend much time thinking about him, analyzing his actions, or worrying about how she appears around him. There is a sense of emotional freedom because there is nothing significant at stake. She can be completely herself because his opinion does not carry much weight in her world. Ironically, this often makes her appear more relaxed and comfortable. However, when genuine attraction enters the picture, the situation changes dramatically. Suddenly, she becomes aware of how she is being perceived. She starts thinking about what she says, how she says it, and how her actions might be interpreted. This awareness creates pressure, and pressure often changes behavior in ways that outsiders misunderstand. Many women learn through experience that openly expressing interest can make them vulnerable. They may have trusted the wrong person in the past, invested emotionally too quickly, or experienced rejection after showing genuine feelings. These experiences create emotional caution. As a result, when they begin to care about someone new, their first instinct is not always to move closer. Sometimes their instinct is to protect themselves. They become more guarded with their emotions. They reveal less than they feel. They monitor their reactions. They try not to appear too available. They convince themselves to remain composed even when they are emotionally affected. To an outside observer, this restraint can look like coldness, but internally, there may be a completely different story unfolding. Another reason cold behavior can be misleading is that attraction often creates anxiety. The more important someone becomes, the more emotional risk they represent. A woman who genuinely likes a man may suddenly become more self-conscious around him. She may overthink conversations, worry about saying the wrong thing, or become nervous in situations where she would normally feel comfortable. Instead of appearing warm and effortless, she may seem distant, quiet, or unusually serious. What looks like indifference can sometimes be the result of intense emotional awareness. Her mind is occupied with thoughts she never has around people she does not care about, and that internal conflict affects how she presents herself on the outside. There is also a difference between emotional expression and emotional intensity. Some people naturally express their feelings openly, while others keep them hidden. A woman may be deeply interested in someone, yet choose to communicate that interest through observation rather than direct expression. She pays attention to details, remembers conversations, notices changes in mood, and quietly follows what is happening in his life. She may not shower him with compliments or obvious signs of affection, but her attention remains fixed on him in ways that reveal a deeper level of emotional involvement. Her actions begin to tell a story that her words never openly confess. One of the most misunderstood aspects of attraction is that emotional investment does not always make a person more open. In many cases, it does the exact opposite. The more someone begins to care, the more carefully they guard their emotions. Most people imagine that strong feelings naturally lead to obvious expressions of affection, constant communication, and clear signs of interest. While that can certainly happen, there is another side of human nature that is often overlooked. When emotions become significant, they also create risk. The possibility of rejection, disappointment, embarrassment, or emotional pain suddenly becomes real. As a result, many people develop protective behaviors that hide the very feelings they are trying so hard not to reveal. When a woman becomes emotionally invested in a man, she often finds herself in a position where she has something valuable to lose. Before she cared, his actions had little impact on her emotional state. His attention was pleasant, but not necessary. His approval was nice, but not important. However, once genuine feelings begin to develop, everything changes. His responses start carrying more weight. His absence becomes more noticeable. His opinions become more influential. The connection begins to matter. And whenever something matters, fear naturally follows. The fear is not necessarily irrational. It comes from understanding that emotional attachment creates vulnerability. The stronger the feelings become, the greater the potential for emotional pain if things do not work out. This is why many women instinctively build protective walls around themselves when attraction becomes serious. Instead of expressing every feeling openly, they become more selective about what they reveal. They may hold back compliments they genuinely want to give. They may resist initiating conversations even when they are thinking about him constantly. They may act less excited than they actually feel when they hear from him. These behaviors are not always games or manipulation. More often, they are attempts to maintain emotional balance. They are efforts to avoid feeling exposed. The woman is trying to protect her heart while simultaneously managing feelings she cannot easily ignore. Self-protection often appears in subtle ways. A woman may become more reserved after a particularly meaningful interaction. She may suddenly seem distant after moments of closeness. She may change the subject when conversations become emotionally vulnerable. She may respond with caution even when she is happy to hear from someone. These reactions can confuse men who expect attraction to be consistently obvious. They wonder why someone who appears interested would suddenly become guarded. What they fail to realize is that emotional closeness can trigger fear just as easily as excitement. The connection becomes real, and reality forces people to confront the possibility of getting hurt. Past experiences play a significant role in this process. A woman who has experienced heartbreak, betrayal, false promises, or emotional disappointment often becomes more cautious with future relationships. Even when she meets someone she genuinely likes, those previous experiences remain in the background. They influence her decisions, shape her expectations, and affect the speed at which she allows herself to trust. She may want connection while simultaneously fearing the consequences of giving too much too soon. This internal conflict creates behavior that can seem contradictory. One moment she appears engaged and interested, and the next she seems withdrawn and distant. The inconsistency is often the result of competing emotions rather than a lack of attraction. Emotional investment hidden behind self-protection is not about a lack of feeling. It is often evidence of the opposite. People rarely build defenses around things that do not matter to them. They protect what they value. They guard what has the power to affect them. The challenge is understanding that attraction is not always expressed through obvious affection. Sometimes it is expressed through caution, restraint, and careful emotional management. Beneath a calm exterior, there may be countless thoughts, concerns, hopes, and fears that never become visible to the outside world, creating a situation where the strongest feelings are often concealed behind the strongest defenses. One of the most reliable ways to understand attraction is to stop focusing solely on what a woman says and start paying attention to what she consistently does. Words are important, but they are also easy to control. People can choose their language carefully, hide their emotions, avoid difficult conversations, or say what they think is expected of them. Actions, however, are much harder to fake over time. They reveal priorities, emotional investment, curiosity, and attention in ways that verbal communication often does not. This is why someone can appear cold, neutral, or even dismissive with their words while simultaneously demonstrating strong interest through their behavior. Consider how people naturally behave around someone who truly matters to them. They notice details, they remember conversations, they make time, they check in unexpectedly, they become curious about what is happening in that person's life. These behaviors usually happen automatically because attention follows emotional importance. A woman who is emotionally invested may not openly admit her feelings, but her actions often reveal that she is paying far more attention than someone who is indifferent would. She may remember something you mentioned weeks ago, notice changes in your mood, or bring up details that even close friends have forgotten. This level of awareness rarely exists without a deeper emotional reason. Another powerful indicator is consistency. Anyone can send a kind message once or have a good conversation on a particular day. What matters is the pattern that develops over time. Does she repeatedly find reasons to stay connected? Does she continue engaging even when she could easily let the interaction fade? Does she show up in small ways that require effort? Attraction is often revealed through repeated investment rather than dramatic gestures. A woman who consistently creates opportunities for contact is demonstrating that the connection occupies space in her mind, even if she never labels it openly. Behavior around other women can also reveal hidden feelings. A woman who genuinely does not care about a man usually has little interest in who else is giving him attention. However, when emotional investment exists, curiosity often appears. She may ask subtle questions about female friends, notice interactions that others overlook, or become unusually attentive when another woman enters the picture. These reactions are not always dramatic or obvious, but they often indicate that she is emotionally tracking her position in his life. The behavior itself communicates concern, and concern is rarely present without attachment. It is also important to notice the difference between how she treats you and how she treats everyone else. Many people maintain a certain social style with acquaintances, co-workers, and casual friends. When attraction enters the picture, that style often changes. She may become quieter, more serious, more playful, more nervous, or more attentive specifically around you. The shift in behavior is often more revealing than any single statement she makes. Strong emotions tend to affect a person's natural rhythm, and those changes become visible when you compare her interactions across different situations. One reason actions are so revealing is that they require energy. Time, attention, effort, and emotional focus are limited resources. People naturally direct those resources toward what matters most to them. If a woman repeatedly invests those resources in you, that investment carries meaning regardless of whether she openly expresses it. She may avoid vulnerable conversations, downplay her feelings, or maintain a cool exterior, but her behavior continues to move toward connection rather than away from it. This does not mean that every friendly action should be interpreted as romantic interest. Context and patterns matter. The key is looking for clusters of behaviors that consistently point in the same direction. One remembered detail means little on its own. One message means little on its own. But when attention, curiosity, consistency, effort, and behavioral changes repeatedly appear together, they often reveal an emotional reality that words alone never fully capture. One of the most fascinating truths about human behavior is that genuine emotional obsession rarely reveals itself through a single dramatic action. Instead, it reveals itself through patterns. A person who is emotionally fixated on someone may try to hide their feelings, control their reactions, and appear unaffected on the surface, but maintaining that image becomes increasingly difficult over time. The reason is simple. Emotions influence behavior, whether we want them to or not. When someone occupies a significant amount of mental and emotional space, that influence begins to appear in small, repeated actions. These actions may seem insignificant when viewed individually, but together they create a pattern that becomes impossible to ignore. Many women who develop strong feelings for someone do not consciously decide to reveal their emotional investment. In fact, they often make a deliberate effort to conceal it. They may tell themselves not to think about him so much, not to check for messages, not to wonder what he is doing, and not to care about details that should not matter. Yet, despite these intentions, their behavior often tells a different story. They find themselves paying attention when his name comes up in conversation. They notice when he seems different than usual. They become aware of changes in his mood, routine, or social circle. These observations happen because emotional attachment naturally increases attention. The mind becomes drawn toward whatever it considers important, and that focus eventually leaves traces in behavior. One of the strongest patterns created by obsession is consistency of attention. Most people occasionally think about others, especially those they interact with regularly. However, when someone becomes emotionally significant, the attention becomes more frequent and more detailed. A woman may remember conversations long after they happen. She may recall specific comments, preferences, goals, or stories that most people would forget. She may notice small details that seem insignificant to everyone else. This level of awareness is rarely accidental. It develops because her mind continues returning to the same person repeatedly, reinforcing information that would otherwise disappear from memory. Another pattern that often emerges is the tendency to seek information. When someone becomes emotionally invested, curiosity increases. A woman who is obsessed with a man may not openly admit how much she wants to know about him, but her behavior often reflects that desire. She pays attention to what he shares. She notices changes in his schedule. She remembers things he mentioned casually. She asks questions that seem unrelated on the surface, but help her understand more about his life. Even when she acts distant, this curiosity continues operating in the background. Her interest motivates her to gather information because understanding him feels emotionally rewarding. Obsession also creates repeated attempts at connection. These attempts are not always obvious. Sometimes they appear as small interactions that seem casual or insignificant. She may react to something he posts, start conversations about minor topics, or find excuses to communicate when no real reason exists. The specific interaction may not be important. What matters is the repeated effort to maintain a presence in his life. People naturally make time and create opportunities for the things that matter to them. When these interactions happen consistently, they often reveal an emotional motivation that extends far beyond simple politeness. Another reason obsession is difficult to hide is that emotions tend to create behavioral contradictions. A woman may try to appear detached while simultaneously demonstrating unusual levels of awareness and involvement. She may act indifferent while remembering details nobody else remembers. She may claim not to care while becoming noticeably affected by changes in his behavior. She may create distance but then find reasons to return. These contradictions occur because her conscious desire to remain guarded conflicts with her emotional desire for connection. Over time, the conflict produces recognizable patterns that expose what she is trying to conceal. No matter how controlled someone's words may be, repeated actions eventually reveal where their attention, emotions, and priorities truly reside. Writing variant to standard, ID 93267, Shri 5. Attention and curiosity are stronger indicators than affection. One of the biggest misconceptions about attraction is the belief that affection is always the clearest sign of emotional interest. Many people assume that if a woman likes a man, she will constantly compliment him, express her feelings openly, seek physical closeness, or make her attraction obvious through warm and affectionate behavior. While these signs can certainly exist, they are not always the most reliable indicators of genuine emotional investment. In many situations, especially when a woman is trying to protect her feelings or maintain emotional control, affection may be limited, restrained, or completely hidden. What often remains visible, however, is her attention and curiosity. These two behaviors are much harder to suppress because they operate naturally whenever someone becomes emotionally important. Attention is one of the most valuable resources a person possesses. Every day, people are surrounded by countless distractions, responsibilities, conversations, and concerns competing for their focus. Most individuals quickly forget information that has little emotional significance to them. They may listen politely during conversations, but details fade from memory because there is no deeper reason to retain them. When a woman becomes emotionally invested in someone, that process changes dramatically. Suddenly, information connected to that person gains importance. She remembers stories he told weeks ago. She notices subtle changes in his behavior. She pays attention to things that others overlook. This heightened awareness often develops automatically because emotional significance naturally directs attention. A woman who is genuinely interested may not openly express her feelings, but she frequently demonstrates that she is paying close attention. She remembers your preferences, your goals, your frustrations, and even small comments that seemed insignificant when you first mentioned them. She may bring up details from previous conversations that you barely remember sharing. She may notice when something feels different about your mood or energy before anyone else does. These observations reveal a level of mental engagement that casual interest rarely produces. People remember what matters to them, and sustained attention is often a stronger indicator of attraction than words of affection that can sometimes be given casually. Curiosity is equally revealing. When someone occupies a meaningful place in a person's mind, the desire to understand them naturally grows. A woman who is emotionally invested often wants to know more about the man she likes. She becomes interested in his experiences, ambitions, habits, opinions, and relationships. She may ask questions directly, or she may gather information through observation. Sometimes her curiosity appears subtle. Other times it becomes more noticeable. Regardless of how it manifests, the underlying motivation remains the same. She wants to understand someone who has become emotionally significant to her. This curiosity often extends beyond simple facts. She may become interested in understanding how he thinks, what motivates him, what challenges he faces, and how he responds to different situations. She pays attention not only to what he says, but also to how he behaves. This level of interest reflects emotional investment because people rarely spend mental energy analyzing individuals who have little impact on their lives. Curiosity requires focus, effort, and emotional engagement. It is a sign that someone's presence continues to occupy space in her thoughts, even when they are not together. Another important reason attention and curiosity are powerful indicators is that they are difficult to fake consistently. Affection can sometimes be influenced by social expectations, politeness, or temporary emotions. Attention and curiosity, however, require ongoing effort. They reveal where a person's mind naturally returns when they have freedom to think about whatever they choose. If a woman repeatedly notices details, remembers information, asks questions, follows developments in your life, and demonstrates genuine interest in understanding you, she is revealing something far more meaningful than occasional compliments or obvious displays of affection. Her focus itself becomes evidence of emotional significance because people naturally invest their attention in the things and people that matter most to them. One of the greatest challenges in modern dating is not the lack of attraction between people, but the misunderstanding of attraction. Every day, promising connections fail not because feelings are absent, but because those feelings are interpreted incorrectly. Many men make decisions based on assumptions rather than observations. They see a woman acting distant, reserved, or emotionally controlled and immediately conclude that she is not interested. Once that conclusion is made, they begin changing their behavior. Some walk away completely. Others become frustrated and resentful. Some start chasing harder in an attempt to force a reaction, while others withdraw their attention because they believe rejection is inevitable. In many cases, these responses are based on a misunderstanding of what is actually happening beneath the surface. The reality is that attraction does not always look the way people expect it to look. Movies, social media, and popular dating advice often create the impression that genuine interest should be obvious, effortless, and impossible to miss. According to this belief, a woman who likes a man should constantly show enthusiasm, initiate conversations, and openly communicate her feelings. While this may happen in some situations, human emotions are far more complex than such simplified expectations suggest. People carry insecurities, past experiences, fears, and personal boundaries that influence how they express attraction. A woman can feel deeply connected to someone while simultaneously struggling to reveal those feelings. Without understanding this reality, many men misread caution as rejection and end potentially meaningful connections before they have a chance to develop. One costly mistake men often make is reacting to temporary distance as though it is permanent disinterest. A woman who becomes emotionally invested may occasionally pull back to regain a sense of control over her feelings. She may need time to process her emotions, evaluate the situation, or protect herself from becoming vulnerable too quickly. A man who does not understand this dynamic may interpret her behavior as proof that she does not care. As a result, he withdraws completely or becomes emotionally unavailable. What could have been a momentary phase of caution turns into a permanent separation because both people are reacting to assumptions instead of understanding.